Okay, let's dive into a really remarkable and frankly quite unsettling account today. This actually comes from one of our listeners sharing something they went through personally during a COVID-19 quarantine.
Right, and we all remember how intense that time was. These quarantine centers, field hospitals, they popped up so fast.
Exactly, and they were, by nature, pretty stressful places. Isolating, built out of sheer necessity,
Definitely. And that whole challenging sort of charged atmosphere is the backdrop for this story. It's where the real crisis kind of meets something else.
Yeah, something much harder to explain. It's a really interesting intersection, isn't it?
It really is. You have this intense global health emergency environment, and maybe that collides with personal experiences, or maybe it touches on, local beliefs about things unseen.
Right. So what we get from this account isn't just about being sick and alone. It makes you think about how intense situations might affect what we perceive, or maybe reveal something else entirely.
Yeah, something beyond the ordinary.
So the source here is a first-hand story from a listener we'll call Khun Phee. This happened back in Thailand around 2021.
Okay.
Khun Phee tested positive for COVID, and like many others then, was being taken to a field hospital for quarantine. Standard procedure at the time.
And it's worth remembering what these places often were, like quickly converted buildings, sometimes old schools or halls.
Exactly. Not purpose-built hospitals.
No, not designed for comfort, really. More for capacity.
And Khun Phee's unsettling feeling, it actually started before they even got there, on the ambulance ride.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They were in the back, supposedly alone, but described this feeling of being incredibly crowded, like almost oppressively packed in.
Wow, just a feeling.
An intense, weird discomfort. And then, just for a second, they saw what they saw, like a large, dark shape right there next to them.
Okay, that's strange. Did they think anything of it at the time?
Well, in the account, they kind of rationalized it. Maybe the fever kicking in, or maybe some side effect from medication they'd started.
Makes sense. A natural reaction, probably, when you're feeling ill and stressed, to try and explain away something weird like that.
But the feeling, that quick glimpse, it clearly stuck with them. It sort of set the mood.
I bet.
So they arrive. The field hospital is a converted high school. The account paints this picture, old buildings, staff in that full PPE gear everywhere.
Which can look pretty intimidating itself.
Totally. Adds to the surreal feeling. Khun Phee gets assigned a bed in this big meeting room on the ground floor. Just rows of beds spaced out.
And what was the atmosphere like in there?
Mostly quiet, actually. A lot of the patients were older, quite sick, just resting, sleeping.
Right, a sort of heavy quiet punctuated by medical sounds, maybe.
Yeah. But there was one sound that was pretty constant, hard to ignore. The patient in the bed across the aisle from Khun Phee.
Okay.
An older man who coughed. A lot. Like really heavily, constantly. Every few minutes you'd hear this deep kind of rattling cough.
Ah, okay. One of those sounds that just becomes part of the background noise almost.
Exactly. But alongside that cough, Khun Phee started noticing something else at night, after lights out.
What was that?
Footsteps. Loud ones. Distinct. The account says they sounded like high heels clicking on a hard floor, coming from upstairs, the second floor.
Footsteps above, in a quiet hospital ward at night. That's odd in itself.
Yeah, strange enough. But things get really, really chilling on the fourth night. Khun Phee wakes up. Middle of the night.
Okay.
Room's dark, mostly quiet, except, maybe soft breathing, distant sounds. But the man across the aisle, the guy who always coughed, he was sitting up, bolt upright on his bed.
Okay. Maybe just couldn't sleep.
But here's the thing that Khun Phee said felt profoundly wrong. He wasn't coughing. He was just sitting there, silent, completely motionless in the dark. And given how he always coughed, that silence, that stillness, it was deeply unnatural.
Yeah, I can see how that would be jarring, the absence of the usual sound.
Khun Phee felt this real unease. Called out his name softly. Nothing. But louder. Still no response. Just this dark, still shape sitting there.
Couldn't see details.
No, too dark. Couldn't tell if his eyes were open or anything. And Khun Phee really needed the bathroom. So, eventually, feeling freaked out, but needing to go, they decided to just get up.
And the bathroom wasn't right there, was it?
No, that's another detail. It was in a separate building outside. You had to walk there.
Oh, wow. So middle of the night, feeling sick.
Yeah, walk outside across this probably dimly lit area. The account describes it feeling incredibly isolated, quiet, just eerie. Like walking onto a horror movie set, basically.
Yeah, that sounds unnerving.
And as Khun Phee is walking through this creepy space, they start to hear it.
Hear what?
Footsteps. Distinct dragging footsteps
Oh.
coming from behind them.
Oh, no.
They stop walking, the sound stops. They start walking again, the sound starts again, right behind them.
Okay, that's terrifying. What did they think it was?
First thought, maybe it's just my own feet. You know, shuffling, maybe weak from being ill, the ground's uneven.
Right, trying to rationalize again.
Yeah, but they tested it. Stopped deliberately. Held their breath. Listened hard. The sound was definitely separate from their own movement. And it sounded like two sets of footsteps following them.
2 sets. Oh, okay, that's much worse.
Yeah. Despite being absolutely terrified now, Khun Phee makes it to the bathroom building, gets inside, goes to wash their hands, and then hears a toilet flush.
From one of the stalls?
Yeah, the innermost stall.
Was anyone else supposed to be out there?
Unlikely at that hour, seemed deserted. So naturally, they look over. The stall door is slightly open, ajar. They peek through the gap. Even crouched down to look under the door for feet. Nothing. Nobody there.
Okay. Maybe an old toilet system? Faulty flush?
Maybe, but then it flushes again. Loudly.
Oh, come on.
And right after that second flush, the lights in the bathroom start flickering like crazy. On, off, on, off.
Okay, that's the final straw, right?
Absolutely. According to the account, that was it. Panic mode. No more thinking, just turn and run. Back to the room as fast as they could.
I don't blame them one bit.
Heart pounding to get back to their bed. Glance across the aisle.
What?
The man is lying down now.
Lying down. Okay, that's also weird after seeing him sitting up.
Yeah. But Khun Phee was just so overwhelmed with fear, exhaustion, just pulled a blanket right over their head and eventually somehow managed to fall into this sort of fitful sleep.
Wow, what a night.
But the real shock, it came in the morning. Khun Phee gets woken up by commotion. Staff members in PPE gathered around the bed across the aisle.
Oh no, don't tell me.
Yeah. Khun Phee sees them pull a white sheet completely over the man. He'd passed away.
Oh wow, so sad. But also, the timing.
Exactly. The staff told the patients that he'd likely died several hours before. They estimated maybe 6 to 8 hours earlier.
Which would put the time of death?
Around 11 p.m. the night before.
Okay, wait.
Yeah. That's when it hits Khun Phee, 11 p.m. That was roughly the time they woke up and saw him sitting there, silent, motionless, not coughing.
So, what Khun Phee saw.
The chilling realization in the account is that they believe they saw the man's spirit. Maybe right at the moment he died, or just after, still sort of there, anchored to his body, maybe not even aware yet.
That is incredibly chilling. The precision of that timing detail, it really adds weight to their interpretation, doesn't it, within the narrative?
Absolutely. But it didn't stop there. The disturbances on the first floor weren't over just because the man had passed.
So what do you mean?
In the following nights, even though his bed was empty, Khun Phee kept hearing it. That distinct, heavy cough coming from the empty space where his bed was.
Oh, phantom sounds. That's deeply unsettling.
And sometimes, looking over, they'd perceive this dark shape, sort of resembling the man lying on the empty bed. And it seemed to jolt slightly with each phantom cough they heard.
Wow. Did anyone else notice this?
Apparently not. The account mentions feeling really isolated with this. Other patients didn't seem to hear or see anything, or at least didn't say so.
Making it even more terrifying, probably, feeling alone in that experience.
Totally. Understandably, Khun Phee was becoming a wreck. Couldn't sleep. Just constant fear. They decided they had to get out of that room off that floor.
Makes sense.
So they asked to be moved. Requested a transfer to the second floor, hoping to get away from the coughing, the footsteps they'd heard from above. Just escape it all.
And what did the staff say? Were they accommodating?
This is another interesting detail from the source. The staff seemed hesitant. They kept asking Khun Phee, "Are you sure? Are you really sure you want to move to the second floor?"
Huh. That's odd. Like they knew something. A subtle warning, maybe.
Maybe. Despite the questions, the move got approved. Khun Phee goes up to the second floor, and the first thing they notice is how empty it is.
Empty. Compared to the ground floor.
Yeah, surprisingly few patients up there, especially considering how full the ground floor was.
Okay. So maybe quieter, less going on.
Initially, Khun Phee felt relieved. Fewer people, maybe more peaceful, finally away from the haunting downstairs.
But I have a feeling that relief didn't last long.
You'd be right. It didn't. Khun Phee noticed the few patients up there went to bed super early, like out by 9 p.m.
Okay.
Khun Phee would stay up a bit later. And then, around 11 p.m. every night, the disturbances started again.
Oh no, what kind of disturbances?
Loud footsteps. pacing back and forth right outside their room, the sound of sliding doors opening and closing in nearby, supposedly empty rooms. Sometimes even the sound of chairs being dragged across the floor.
Wait, those footsteps, were they like the ones they heard before?
Exactly. Sounded remarkably similar to those heel-clicking footsteps Khun Phee had heard coming from the second floor when they were on the first floor.
So they basically moved closer to the source of one of the original disturbances.
Oh, wow.
Right back in it, in a way. Confused, scared again, Khun Phee cautiously started asking some of the other few patients on the second floor, "Hey, do you hear anything weird at night?"
And what did they say?
Turns out Khun Phee wasn't alone up there either. Many of the others had experienced similar things. Some had encounters that were apparently even more intense, maybe even visual. Really?
Yeah. And those experiences were so bad for some that they'd actually asked to be moved back down to the first floor, despite its own problems.
Ah, so that's why the second floor was so empty. People were actively trying to get away from it?
Exactly. And it explains the staff's hesitation earlier. They must have known the second floor had a reputation.
Definitely sounds like it.
So on the last day before leaving, Khun Phee felt this need to just look around the second floor properly, driven by curiosity, maybe needing some answers.
What did they find?
Walking down the hallway, they saw that most of the rooms, the ones they heard sounds from every night, were actually chained shut and locked from the outside.
Locked. But they were hearing doors sliding, chairs dragging inside them.
Apparently. And as they walked past these locked, supposedly haunted rooms, they also noticed little talismans, small protective charms or symbols placed above some of the doorways.
Wow, like people trying to ward something off.
Yeah. And during that walk, Khun Phee described this intense, really unnerving feeling of just being watched.
I bet. So did they ever get an explanation from the staff?
Yes, they asked the staff directly about the second floor before they left, and the staff basically confirmed everything.
What did they say?
They said, yeah, that building, it was known to be haunted long before it even became a field hospital. It had a history.
Okay, so existing lore around the place.
Right. But the staff had a theory about why it was so active during the pandemic. They believed the spirits of patients who died there, in the field hospital, were trapped.
Trapped. Why?
Because of the COVID restrictions. The strict protocols meant families couldn't perform the usual traditional funeral rites, things like inviting the spirit home, ceremonies to help them move on. None of that could happen.
Ah, I see. So the belief was that without those proper rites, the spirits were stuck, earthbound.
Exactly. According to the staff's belief, these newer spirits were adding to the existing activity. And the second floor, already known for being active, became this hotspot for both the old spirits and these newly trapped pandemic spirits.
That adds such a layer of pandemic-specific tragedy to the whole paranormal aspect. The idea that the necessary safety measures inadvertently created conditions that, according to their beliefs, trapped souls.
Yeah, it's heavy. After Khun Phee finally got home, finished quarantine, they were still really affected by it all. The account says they performed making merit for the spirits back at the hospital.
That's a traditional practice, right? Offerings, prayers.
Yeah, to generate good karma, hopefully bring some peace to those spirits. Khun Phee hoped it might help them and maybe spare future patients from going through the same thing.
Reflecting on this whole account, what really stands out is that consistency, isn't it? The way the phenomena build and layer.
How so?
Well, it starts with that vague, almost psychological feeling in the ambulance, right? Then it escalates to very specific sounds, the footsteps, the phantom coughing, then visual things, the man sitting up, the dark shape on the bed, and finally, it gets external validation from other patients and the staff themselves.
Yeah, it's not just one isolated weird event. It's a sequence.
Exactly. It builds from personal unease to what's presented as this shared, confirmed haunting experience within that specific, stressful environment.
And the details Khun Phee provides are so specific, aren't they? The 2 sets of footsteps, the double toilet flush from an empty stall, the timing of the man's death matching the apparition.
The coughing from the empty bed, seeing the figure jolt with the sound, the locked room still making noise, the talismans.
Yeah, these aren't just vague feelings. They're concrete points in the story that make it feel so vivid and unsettling.
And crucially, it's not just Khun Phee's solitary experience in the end. You have the other patients confirming issues on the second floor leading them to move, and the staff's confirmation.
Right, their explanation tying it to the building's history and the pandemic's unique impact on traditions.
Yeah, it suggests that within the context of this source, the environment itself, the fear, the isolation, the death, and crucially the disruption of those important cultural rites might have inadvertently created conditions that were believed to, amplify or trap spiritual activity.
So what this really highlights is how a massive real-world crisis like the pandemic can intersect with these deeply personal, frightening experiences, and how those experiences tap into existing cultural beliefs about spirits, death, and what happens when traditions are broken.
It's a powerful reminder that even in a very scientific medical emergency context, human experience gets filtered through many lenses, sometimes, including the lens of the supernatural or paranormal beliefs.
It really makes you think about the spaces we use, especially in times of crisis or vulnerability. This story, as Khun Phee tells it, suggests the place itself, combined with the events and the blocked cultural responses, played a huge role in what was perceived.
It does. It really poses questions about environments marked by stress, by sudden loss, especially when the normal ways people process grief and transition are interrupted.
Khun Phee's 14 days there. It's certainly a unique and incredibly harrowing story. A real chilling mix of a public health crisis and something deeply personal and unexplained. It makes you wonder about the hidden stories of places like that.
It definitely does. You're left thinking about what else might be perceived or experienced in spaces repurposed by crisis, particularly when those human rituals around death get disrupted.
Indeed. So it leaves us with a thought, doesn't it? How might our surroundings, especially when we feel vulnerable or cut off, actually shape what we perceive? And what could unseen presences in such places really signify? Definitely something to think about.
Absolutely. Food for thought.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive for today. A huge thank you goes out to listener Khun Phee for sharing such a personal and truly unsettling story from what was already a very difficult time.
Yes, sharing something like that takes real courage, and we really appreciate you trusting us with your experience.
And thank you all for tuning in.